So I'm still updating the manuscript in my PACKTOTE'R's THRU HIKE planner, and I said in the last video that I give it away free the 1st and the 15th of every month, and obviously I have some math majors out there who called me on that because I said Amazon only gives me 20 days a year to give the book away, which it does. And so yes, you're right, I run out of days the end of October. So November and December, it's not free. Wait till January, or put out that $2.99 to get 200 pages of things to think about if you're gonna do a through hike. But today, I'm working on updating my stove options, and but really this video is more about how things are always in flux, how you're evolving with gear, hiking methods, cooking methods, everything you do on the trail. And so a lot of this video was shot in Big Bend last fall, and you'll see now that I don't do hardly any of those things. And I've kind of changed my mind on how I use an alcohol stove. And so I still think, if you're gonna carry a stove and you're gonna do quite a bit of water boiling or cooking in general, a butane stove is still your best bet. But for me, I'm doing more cold soaking now. The only thing that really I need a stove for is I'm addicted to my omelets and my breakfast burritos, and so I bring enough fuel, and only because I'm carrying this fuel. I still think alcohol is very inefficient and weight-wise, but I'm carrying my fuel in my hiking storage poles that I made now. Another video you should check out, I'll leave a link below. And so it actually worked out better for me because the blowtorch kind of butane stoves, they'll give you a quick boil, but they'll boil over. You're always having to fiddle. If you watch enough of my videos, you know I don't like to fiddle. And so I'm still using my THRU 550, but I just, you can make all kinds of stoves. This is probably the easiest. You get a cat food can, paper punch some holes in it. You don't have to measure it. I just punch a bunch in, and I'll put half of one of my storage tubes that I put in my poles, half of that in this can, and I can kind of put my omelet in and just forget it. It's gonna come to a boil in 6 to 8 minutes. That little half a test tube full of fuel will burn for 12 to 15 minutes. But the boil never boils over. It just, because of its inefficiency, again, you just get that rolling boil. Even when it goes out, I don't even look at it. I just walk away for 15 minutes. When I come back, my omelet's done, because even when the boil goes away, there's still that ultra hot water in there cooking my omelet. And I keep reducing the amount of fuel I use because I just need that, depending on wind, because again, if there's even the slightest breeze, it's gonna, your flame's gonna dance, your heat's gonna just prance away from your pot, and it may take more fuel. So you need some kind, I'll put my gear. I was just on Lake Superior. It's an inland ocean, and so you've got a breeze all the time when you're cooking right along the shore there. I was blocking everything I could, and still it took me longer to cook my omelets just because the heat was getting blown away from my pot. So a lot of things I talk about on these videos are really focused on through hiking rather than, a weekend gathering with friends, going to a destination, whatever. When you're through hiking, it's all about time and space. If you're going northbound on the PCT or the CDT or the AT, you've got to get to Canada or Katahdin before the snow flies. And so you don't want to be spending 2 hours cooking meals every day. And so, when I'm trying to figure out my best method, I want no fiddling. I want quick and easy. And, I want to sit down and, maybe spend 15-20 minutes making a meal and hitting the trail again. So listen to this video I shot in Big Bend last year. It'll give you some idea of some of your options, and I hope you learned something from it. Keep smiling. Welcome to another episode of a Backpacker's Random Thoughts. Today we're going to talk about buying a backpacking stove and hiking a little bit in Big Bend National Park. I've had dozens of stoves over the years, so I should be capable of giving you some useful insight into what to consider, at least when choosing a stove. Your fuel choices are basically wood, gas, either liquid or compressed, solid fuel tabs, and a very popular one is alcohol. But let's start out with what I personally think are poor choices. Alcohol, liquid gas, solid fuel tabs. Even the most efficient devices using any of these fuels are still frustratingly slow, still inefficient, offer no fuel weight savings, and most of them are messy. But if you need to be convinced, all you gotta do is build them, buy them, try them. I've tried them all. If you do, just take into account the time it takes to boil a couple cups of water, the amount and weight of the fuel, ease of use in all kinds of crazy conditions, fire restrictions today. In many hiking areas you can't use them, and setup. Enough said. Wood burning I put into a little different category. I use a Sierra Zip stove for many years, and I loved it. I didn't have to carry fuel. I could burn as long as I needed to if I was making something like pancakes or doing anything other than boiling water. It was pretty fast boil. I became really efficient at starting little twig fires in the pot, and it works like a blacksmith's forge. You start a fire and the small little battery operated fan just shoots the oxygen to it. The setup was a little entailed, but once you got it started, you could boil water in 3 minutes. I carried it during my whole CDT and GDT through hikes in all kinds of weather. If I knew I was going to hit a wet spell, I'd just gather some ground litter in a little Ziploc bag to keep it dry so I had fuel. A majority of the time I could just sit down anywhere and reach around me and grab enough fuel to heat whatever I needed. The only reason I stopped using it was the fact that so many wilderness jurisdictions ban them because of the new normal and fire bans. If you were to use one today and you are one of those people that are just too lazy to blow up your own air mattress, because hey, that can take a couple of minutes. You could build your own wood burner incorporating that mattress inflator to fan the flames instead of the little battery operated fan. That way you would get double usage from one item. Always a good thing when you're trying to keep the weight down. So that brings us to my water boiler of choice today, a butane stove. Notice I didn't say mixed gas stove, I said butane, because I don't buy those expensive gas canisters. I roll my own, or should I say fill my own. This is a great little tip. It is getting better, but for a long time it was harder to find gas canisters when you needed them in a trail town. And I solved that problem by buying this tiny little refill device on eBay. It is so simple to fill your own gas canisters, and you can find the butane refill canisters in any hardware you can find alcohol, which is why a lot of people use the alcohol stoves, because it was easy to find fuel on a through hike. The refills are cheap, just a few bucks, enough to fill 2 small canisters.
So be sure to share your gas with your fellow hikers if you're not already. So, out of the bazillion gas stoves on the market, what should you buy? It all comes down to a personal choice, but this is my story. At the time I jumped ship on the Zip stove, Jetboil arrived on the scene. Again, a young, innovative company that changed the whole gas stove approach. You know, I bought their Soul Titanium model and I used it for a dozen years. It was light, quick, efficient, convenient, and they still are. I highly recommend them. Love the company, love its customer service. I sent my Jetboil back a couple of times because the little coiled heat exchangers fatigued, basically from overuse. They replaced them for free. I didn't expect that. I used mine many times more than most average backpackers would, but even quality gear wears out when you use it constantly. But that is not what I'm using presently, and here's why.
I was hiking the AT this year, started in Katahdin, started through the 100-mile wilderness, fell, landed on my pack, and crushed my Jetboil that I've had for about 10-15 years. So this is my new setup.
I'm now using a BRS stove and a 550 mil Toaks titanium cup. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a new stove until I studied the market a bit and decided on, what bells and whistles I needed today. Gear technology is constantly changing, and I haven't shopped for a stove in years, so I bought this little BRS, even though a lot of people I've hiked with have had product failures with it of various kinds. The little wings break, O-ring fails. I just thought of it as a throwaway item, something that would kind of get me through until I knew what I wanted. So, why am I still carrying this kit today? Well, as it turns out, it checked all the boxes for me. I have had no failures so far. It cost less than $50 for the stove and the pot. Stove weighs half an ounce, so if it became unreliable, I might just carry an extra one. The whole kit is not quite half, but much lighter than my Jetboil kit was, and it is half the size. Is it perfect? Is it as trusty as my Jetboil? No. Probably uses twice as much gas to boil the same amount of water. Even a gentle breeze will raise havoc with the flame, but it simmers pretty well. And the majority of the time I'm only boiling 2 cups of water or less, so I can hold up my sit pad as a windbreak for a couple of minutes, no big problem. Another change for me is cold soaking. I'm not a candidate for 100% cold soaking, but I have played with many cold dishes and found several I really enjoy, which means I'm using a lot less gas these days. On a thru hike, I'll always start out carrying a full canister from a resupply, but during treks that last just a few days, like here in Big Bend, I'll fill the canisters with, just the amount of gas I think I'll need, which is another plus for filling your own. I did have one big concern with this kit, and that would have been a deal breaker, and that was with the volume of the 550 mil pot. I love the fact that this combination of stove and pot take much less real estate up in my pack and weigh a lot less. But would they boil my omelet? One of my favorite meals, which is delicious, super easy, no mess, involves making an omelet in a Ziploc bag. I use Ova egg crystals, which are real eggs, not the cardboard tasty normal freeze-dried variety. I just add crystals to a Ziploc, then throw in the kitchen sink. Freeze-dried chicken, freeze-dried everything, peppers, mushrooms, shredded cheese, Nido milk powder, whatever other freeze-dried veggies I might have on hand. I buy freeze-dried ingredients in bulk number 10 cans, and then I can mix and match. On the trail, I just add water, smush it around a bit in the bag, fold it up, and drop it in my cup. And as it turns out, the 550 ml cup was just big enough and worked perfect. As a side note, it doesn't take a lot of fuel to pull this off. I bring the water to a boil, then shut the stove off and just let my omelet seep in the bag for several minutes. Pull it out, smush it some more, fire up the stove, and in seconds it comes back to a boil. Shut the stove off again and let it steep a bit more. When the omelet's done, I have hot water for my coffee, and this is like a 10-15 minute task for a delicious breakfast burrito on the trail. And don't forget to vacuum seal a packet of Paul Newman's mango sauce. So, will I buy a Jetboil? Jury's still out. I just spent a couple weeks in Big Bend National Park, and the little stove that could did everything I asked of it. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The objective here is to find something that works for you. Listen to everyone, ask the right questions, then make up your own mind and get whatever turns you on. Here's another little stove hack story that you might want to consider. On my Great Divide Trail hike, it was very wet, very cold. One day in the White Gold Wilderness, my toes were painfully frozen. I stopped, fired up my zip stove, and heated water for coffee. Remember, my feet are already soaking wet. As the water was heating, I decided I might get some relief from the cold if I poured the water in my boots instead of in my coffee cup. Oh man, it was like dying and going to heaven. I immediately got up, started hiking, and my feet stayed warm for hours. I just needed that temperature turbocharge. I told my wife this story when I finished the hike, only instead of the dying and going to heaven line, I said it was better than sex. That was a mistake, because now every time I get romantic, she tells me to go pour water in my boot. So much for stoves. Let me take you on a short tour of Big Bend. I've backpacked here for years. I never tire of it. Big Bend offers backpackers 150 miles of just awesome trail. Lots of critters, ink dark night skies, echoing canyons. There's just so much to offer backpackers here. And if for no other reason, the sunrises and sunsets and the night chorus of coyotes are well worth the price of admission. It's not as easy to cross the border and have lunch or dinner in the towns of Boquillas and Santa Elena as it was in the old days, but you can still cross legally into Boquillas. Water's really the challenge, so, hike smart and hike safe when you're in areas like this. I'll leave you with some of the sights and sounds of this incredible wilderness area. Keep smiling.